Hey guys, alright, we're going to be going back and discussing some more of the STMRs as a part 2 of the previous video. I had dinner, had a break, so I can talk a little bit more. When I originally agreed to do this video to Flip Method, I thought I'll go through the STMRs, it'll take half an hour, discuss them all, be quick and easy, it'll be done. I was so dead wrong on that. It took me an hour and something to go through like 1/3 of the 5-star STMRs. There's a lot of STMRs in this game, and we're not even doing the limited stuff. Maybe I'll do that in a future video for the fun of it. I will say also, in the previous video, I did make some misrememberings, or I, remembered some stuff incorrectly, and people pointed out in the comments. I do appreciate that, especially for people making corrections that I got stuff, either misremembered or left out because I just didn't remember. It helps people that are not as familiar with the game, and they can browse the comments and see things I overlooked. So I do appreciate that. Like, for example, I forgot that Balthier's STMR has Machine Killer on it, which makes it a little bit better than I had, estimated in the previous video. Still not great, but better than I, represented, because I had completely forgotten that it had Machine Killer on it. Anyway, let's pick up right where we left off, which was Flammie. So the next one would be Kimono Ayaka's STMR. Hers is a hat with a decent spirit, and it gives LB fill per turn. Overall, not a lot special going on here. The LB fill per turn is nice. It does have high spirit, so it's, overall pretty good. I do find myself overall using Arden's TMR as a better LB fill per turn hat because it gives 10% mana regen. And for the most part, spirit on your support units is not super important. But if you do need high spirit, maybe on a healer, maybe for more bulk fight, Kimono Ayaka's is a good hat with 2 LB per turn and I think 95 flat spirit, which is nice. Dressy Eileen's STMR is yet another one of these just boring, bland, two-handed guns. It's lower attack power than Vincent's STMR, which was upgraded. So overall, Dressy Eileen's STMR has pretty much no value unless you just don't have any of the other guns. Sacred Shield Charlotte's STMR is really great. It's a heavy shield with really high spirit. I believe the highest spirit in the game for shields. It also gives 20% HP, 20% spirit, and a lot of resistances. I think 50 to ice and light, if I remember correctly. Overall, it is the best spirit shield in the game. I did mention Sylvie's shield as the best spirit shield. That's for light shields. This is a heavy shield, which is an important distinction because some magical tanks cannot use heavy shields. For example, Neovision's General Celeste cannot use heavy shields without wasting a materia slot. So, for her, Sylvie would be usually better. But for most tanks that want a spirit shield, Sacred Shield Charlotte's STMR, absolutely awesome. Zach's STMR was recently upgraded, and I forget the exact upgrade it got. So now it's 60% attack with a greatsword and 100% true double hand. So yeah, it used to be 40%. So overall, if you're using a greatsword, this is a really good option. It's almost as good as Riku's STMR. And when I say Riku's STMR, by the way, I'm referring to Kingdom Hearts Riku, Neovision. Which is a really, really great STMR that we'll cover probably in the Neovision's video. I might do limited units during that one. But anyway, for a really old unit that most people probably have quite a few copies of Zach, if you're using a greatsword and need double hand, it's really good. It's really good. 60% attack and 100% accuracy. And now with Tyvis being a thing on global, greatswords are probably going to be more popular. Not to mention the new global exclusive card if you decide to go for it. Yuffie's STMR is a two-handed throwing weapon, which has never really seen any use, and even if it would potentially now see use, the 3-star Waka that got an upgrade to 7-star and now has an STMR, his throwing weapon is just better than Yuffie's, so hers has never seen use and never will. Sad face on Yuffie. Morgana's STMR is one of the really, really old sources of true magic dual wield. Back in the day, if you had 2 of these, you could get 50% true dual wield by dual wielding them. This is back when true dual wield for mages was very, very rare. There were 1 or 2 sources in the entire game. Back then, it was okay, still not even that great. But now today, that true dual wield for mages is trivial to max out. It's low quality. It's not good anymore. So Morgana's STMR Had a brief moment in the sun, not anymore. Elena's STMR is a little bit of a mixed bag. On the one hand, it's technically good. It's 60% attack, 60% magic, 50% true double hand for magic and attack. You know, good for hybrids. She herself will probably always be wearing it for a DPS build. The thing is, it is just 50 attack and magic for double hand, which feels low because we have so many sources of more at this point. You know, we've got Cloud for physical, we've got Pause for magic, we've got Starlight Elena for the hybrid version with no flat or percent, but it does have like 150 attack and magic weapon double hand. So overall, Elena's, you know, it is good. Some builds will definitely be using it if you're only 50 short and you want 50 plus some percent attack or magic. It's fine. But I don't really find it too useful in very many of my builds just because that low 50 when I have so many sources of like 100 or better. But it's still fine. Rivera's STMR was upgraded pretty recently. It gave it 30% mana reduction. It also has Holy Resist. It has a lot of flat MP. This is really awesome these days. I love combining Rivera's STMR with Transterra's STMR. That gives you the maximum cap of mana reduction with only 2 slots, and both of them increase your mana pool by an enormous amount. Rivera from the flat MP, does it actually give percent MP as well? I don't know, we're about to find out in 2 seconds. But Transterra's STMR does give percent MP as well. No, it does not. It gives 30% mana reduction, but no percent MP. But it does give 200 flat MP, which is a decent chunk. So yeah, so I like Rivera's STMR on support units. You know, like I said, combine that with Transterra's STMR, and you are at the maximum for mana reduction. And then with some auto mana fill per turn, it basically makes you immune to mana drains, which is super, super powerful on Clash of Wills. Multiple times we've had that where mana drains have been a thing, and this is the get out of jail free card for mana drains. Radiant Lightning's STMR is a sword with LB damage and true dual wield on it. It was pretty good, and I used to use it quite often on dual wielding LB units, like I can't even think, like what's his name? Oh god, Edward and Alfonsi Elric, that kind of stuff. People that would dual wield with LB damage. Unfortunately, once we got the Chronicle weapon upgrade for Noctis, that became just an overall better LB damage weapon for dual wielders, and I use that always at this point. So Radiant Lightning's STMR, not super great anymore. If you don't have any Chronicle weapons from Crown Prince Noctis upgraded, it can still be good, but once again, we're back to the same problem over and over, that we just don't have any dual-wielding DPS that are relevant these days. So, yeah. Neverending Hope's STMR is wonderful. It is wonderful. It is 100% light resist, which is huge. That is the highest in the entire game. Nothing else in the game gives 100 to a single resist except for this. I think, if I'm wrong, you know, feel free to correct me. But I think this is the only source of 100% resistance on a single slot. Great. If light resist is needed, this is super, super good. On top of that, it gives magic as well. And I think MP, maybe not. I know it gives magic. So for mages, even doubly good. But for anyone, tanks, supports, even physical units that just happen to need 100 light resist, you can get it in one materia slot, Neverending Hope. Really good. Make multiple copies. Tsukiko's STMR is a broom. It's a rod. It's a double hand rod. The problem is all it gives is 50 double hand and like 165 or 170 magic. Yeah, just way better options out there these days. Dark Fina and Saul, the Neo Visions, their STMR is just better in every possible way. And even then, it's just not super great. Like, you know, I want a rod to either have LB damage, killers, or high flat stats. This has none of the above. So, yeah. Kaito's STMR is awesome. Evasion is super powerful to the point of being broken in this game. And there are lots and lots and lots of fights that are completely and totally cheesed out by building your entire party with full evasion. And having 30% evasion with some resistances and attack power all in a materia. This is so good on your physical DPS units that have to build for evasion, or just on a tank that needs more evasion. 30% evasion from one materia slot is wonderful. So Kaito's STMR, absolutely top tier. Make as many as you possibly can. It is really, really good. Now we got some limiteds. Kimono Fina's STMR. I mentioned it in the previous video when I was talking about resistance robes. This is the kind of robe that is done right. If you need light or ice resist on any unit, this is wonderful. It's 70 ice and 70 light resistance robe. It also gives pretty high magic, a little bit of spirit. And yeah, so if your mages need ice or light resist, it's great. If your tank needs both of those resistances, like for example, the previous Clash of Wills, Arborealis, that was great. Yeah, it's just an overall really good STMR. On JP, it even got upgraded to be even better, where it got killers added to it. Global has skipped that upgrade, but it may come someday. Warrior of Light's Bart's STMR, it actually did get an upgrade kind of recently where it got killers added to it, and I think the attack power went up, maybe not. It definitely got killers added to it. The problem is, you know, it's a broken record at this point. It's a one-handed weapon. One-handed weapons are not good anymore. That is old meta, so no one's using it. But if you need a wind weapon for a one-hander that does have some, I think it's Plant and Beast Killer by memory, I could be wrong there. It is still technically a good wind weapon. I think our best one-handed wind weapon, potentially. But yeah, it's one-handed. You know, Gumi, please fix. Warrior Blight Lena's STMR is one of my favorite stabs in the game. It's a staff. It is Holy Element, which is, you know, mostly irrelevant, but it can matter if you're using, like, for example, a fight that's sensitive to elements, like the Ashura fight, and you put this on a support unit and you accidentally hit Ashura in phase 2, and oh, you triggered counterattacks because you hit it with Holy. Be careful about that. It is Holy Element. Most of the time, it doesn't really matter. It's a staff with high spirit, and it gives percent spirit, which is really nice. It also gives the Dispelga spell, and as you've probably seen in so many of my videos, that is incredibly useful to purge all effects from your own team. Like if your team gets imbued, if your team gets imperiled, if your team gets stopped or something, you can use the dual cast trick on a support unit and dispel your own party. Or you can equip this on like the base form of like Tifa, Sephiroth, anyone with the Brave Shift and Dark Visions. Use this to purge your team of all imperils. Of course, it is Dispelga, so it's removing all your buffs as well, but it is still very, very worth it sometimes to do that. Saul's STMR is another great STMR. You know, some of these old STMRs are really, really good. Saul's is Heliotite. It's a 70 magic accessory, and it gives 30% mana reduction. You know, again, back in the day, mana reduction was kind of like whatever, but these days, mana reduction has been really, really important on specific fights. It's not always important, but when it does matter, it matters a lot, especially in Clash of Wills. You know, so many Clash of Wills have had mana drains, and anytime you're getting mana drained, the hard counter to that is mana reduction cost. So Saul's STMR, not only is it one of the highest magic accessories in the game, it's got mana reduction, super good. Or even for units that just happen to have a naturally high mana consumption, and you know you're not bringing like a healer to refill their mana, being able to lower it is really good. Limited. Well, we'll briefly mention AI Katy Perry. Kind of like I talked about with Flammie, AI Katy Perry's is a limited time, no longer available STMR upgrade package. It is super, super good. Not as popular as it was back in the day because it's just kind of fallen off a little bit, but I would still rank it as one of the best STMRs in the game for the general purpose utility. If you happen to have old copies of AI Katy lying around, maybe you didn't realize how good it was, you know, don't fuse them, don't use them for prisms, omni-prism them, and STMR Moogle them. You want multiple copies of AI Katy's STMR if you happen to have it available. I do not. Global, please bring her back. A lot of limited stuff at this point. And then Wild Rose Furian's STMR. Now, Wild Rose Furian's STMR is great. I mentioned in the previous video about Regina, how she had attack power and 3 killers at 50%. While Wild Rose Furion has 60% attack power unrestricted and 3 killers at 75%. It's just really, really good. Most of the time, only one of the killers will apply, but even then, it's 60 attack power and 75% killer. Sometimes 2 of those killers will apply at the same time. At that point, it becomes incredible. So Wild Rose Furion, you want as many copies as you can fit on your team. So, minimum of 5 copies, assuming, don't UOC for 5 copies, but if you've got like just randomly 20 Furions sitting in your vault, I would say fuse them all and make 5 copies. They cost 3 million gil a pop, but it's worth it. Dark Knight Leon. His STMR, you would think like it would see more use, but not really. It's 100% attack power when you're using a heavy armor and a sword. The problem is that's not a super common combination. Clothing is usually the most popular attack power chest slot. You got like the Clash of Wills clothes, a bunch of killer clothes like Noctis, Arden, Esther, etc. Or like medium armor, for example, Lion armor is a popular chest slot. Heavy armor is not super commonly used on DPS units. There are some. And even then, DPS units that are using heavy armor and a sword at the same time, it's so rare that I have never used this STMR. So, good in theory, 100% attack power from one slot sounds great. It's just such a strange combo that it's just never really come up that often, at least not for me. Warrior of Light Creel's STMR was upgraded on Global a while back. On JP, it's not as good. On Global, it's a full ribbon effect with a really nice magical hat. So I mentioned about Edgar's STMR was my favorite source of status immunity for physical units. Well, Creel is my favorite status immunity source for mages. Anytime I have a mage that needs status immunity, this is my first go-to option, is Creel's STMR. It's a hat with really high magic, some flat MP, and immunity to all ailments. It is super, super good. If you have the ability to, I recommend you make multiple of these. It is a great STMR. Dark Mage X-Death's STMR is good. It's basically the magical version of Regina, different killers though, but it's 60% magic and 50% to 3 different killers, which is good, sounds great. The problem is, well, for one thing, just speaking plainly here, mages aren't super meta these days. There are exceptions. There are some definitely good mages. The problem is most of the mages that are good are either evokers that don't use killers, or they're mages like Angela where they use physical killers, and this is magical killers. I think Tiana is currently the only really meta mage that uses magical killers. There are others like Sniper Physalis, Olivera, Beach, Bowie, Shinju. There are other mages that are good, technically speaking. It's just they're not really seeing a ton of use. Pause is another one that, technically is a recent mage. So magical killers are used on some units. It's just most units don't use magical killers. The mages that do use killers, a lot of them are physical anyway, or they're evokers. So X-Death's STMR, good in theory, but still doesn't see a ton of use because real mages are just not a thing for the most part, with a few exceptions. Warrior of Dawn Galoof's STMR is really good. It's 40 HP, 40 defense, and it gives 50 to fire and light resist. So overall, just the defense and HP, it's pretty good. It's, slightly less HP, slightly more defense over Gladiolus's, but it gives more, a lot of resistances. If the resistances don't matter, I do overall prefer Gladiolus's just because capping defense on tanks seems to be a little bit easier than capping HP, so higher HP is more valued to me. But if the fight needs light or fire resist, Galoof's STMR, top tier. And completely honest here, most of the time on my physical tanks, I'm wearing both of them, so it's good to have both. Chocobo Fina's STMR is another really good one. It's an accessory with 45 to 3 stats. I forgot what 3. I think it's defense, magic, and spirit. I don't think it has attack power on it. We're going to double check real quick. Oh, it does. Oh, 45 to all. You see? It's a good thing I checked. And it gives also gives 5% MP, 3 LB per turn, and a source of guts. So this is really, really good source of guts for either mages or support units, or just LB heavy units or mana heavy units. So overall, for physical units, it's really cold right now. My heater just came on. Let me turn that off real quick, and then we'll resume. I think it might be coming over the speakers. All right, guys. Anyway, yeah. So I mentioned earlier, Queen's STMR is really good for physical units because Queen's STMR is 55 attack power and guts. This, you would lose 10 flat attack, which is about 50 for double hand units, but you would gain some bulk, you'd gain mana regen, you'd gain LB per turn. So really, it's situational. For mages, I'm going to go with the Chocobo accessory if I need guts. For physical units, you know, if I don't need all this extra stuff, I'll still go with Queen's STMR if I need guts. But if I need any of this like extra utility, this is really good. Also, for support units, I really like this accessory. So Chocobo Feather, really, really good STMR. I like it a lot. These are limited. Shadow's STMR is kind of blah. It's a one-handed katana with like a special attack on it that does stop or something. It's super bad. There's no killers on it that are, maybe it has human killer because Shadow has human killer. I don't remember. In any case, it's a one-handed katana. It's not super impressive. If you need a one-handed katana, Xeno of the Beta Star is just way better. Kefka's STMR is really, really nice. This one technically is not as good as Sarah's STMR, but in almost every realistic scenario, it's identical. Sarah's is better. I'll talk about that more when we get there. But Kefka's STMR is great for double hand mages. It's, well, it depends. If you have Paus's STMR, that one's going to usually be better, but Kefka's is a good alternative if you only need 100 more double hand. It's 100 double hand and 60% magic. Now, if you need percent magic, Kefka's is wonderful. If you don't need percent magic and you do need even more double hand, usually Paus's STMR or Starlight Elena's STMR is going to do more for you. But if you're short on percent magic, Kefka's is great. Aldor King Rain's STMR, I mentioned during the Cloud review that Cloud's STMR is kind of just plain Jane. King Rain's STMR is similar. It's I think it's slightly less attack power, but it gives 50% double hand or LB damage. I don't even remember, but overall, this is another one where I wouldn't really recommend going for this one. This is just one of the many great sword double hand STMRs. But there's a lot better ones coming up that I would recommend. If you're gonna Moogle for an STMR greatsword, it wouldn't be this one in my opinion. Magitech Warrior Terra's STMR is too specialized in my opinion. It's 80% magic while using a sword and 10% mana reduction. So, you know, percent magic and mana reduction is a pretty good combo. Unfortunately, it's only while using a sword, and almost no mages use swords except for Terra and Ferris. So, and those are both evokers that use their LB for their primary damage. They're not mana hungry. They don't really need tons of magic. They need Evo stats. So for neither of those would I really recommend this STMR. So while it is on paper a good STMR just because of the mana reduction, it's only 10% though. Even that's not that great. It's still, I find myself barely ever using this. Adventurer Locke's STMR was like super top tier back in JP. We were really hyped for it on Global. And then Zon came out. We're going to talk about Zon really soon. But yeah, so Adventurer Locke's STMR is just a worse version of Zon. If you're going to Moogle for an Evasion STMR, wait for Zon review coming up very soon. So Locke's really got power crept by Zon. It's pretty freaking hard. Limited, and then now we're to the Black Friday units. So Operative Xyrus STMR is a rod with machine and dragon killer. Overall, for mage fighting machines or dragons, it's a pretty good option. The big problem is, as I mentioned during the X-Death STMR, the amount of units that actually use magical killers and are still relevant in today's meta is a very small pool. Some of them, like Oliveira, would rather be using their own STMR, which is an instrument. Others, like Sniper Physalis, she's going to be using her guns and her chronicle weapons. She's not going to use this. So, like, the only mage that would even use Aiden's STMR against a dragon or a machine would be like Pause or Beach Buoy Shinju. And neither of those units are even that great. Like, I know Shinju, technically speaking, is a good finisher. It's just like she's so specialized. You know, she can only do magic. She can only do earth damage. Pause can only do light damage. Yeah, these are just not really highly useful units. But, you know, against a dragon or a machine, Aiden's STMR could see use for Pause or Shinju. Although the reality is you would probably wind up using a limit burst damage rod like Levantine or the Shantoto's Chronicle over Aiden's STMR anyway. Not Aiden, or over Xyrus's STMR anyway, because Xyrus's STMR has lower magic. So that's the harsh reality of it there. It's not going to see a ton of use, but in theory, it could be useful someday. Dr. Aiden's STMR, I mentioned that during the Ayaka discussion. It's basically just like a slightly better version of Ayaka's, in my opinion. It doesn't have MP on it, so it's 15% HP, and it trades the 15% MP for two LB per turn. I personally prefer LB per turn over Mana Pool. I like LB per turn. Lots of units have really good LBs. If the unit does not care about their limit burst at all, and you do want bulk, Ayaka's is a little bit better. But the reality is here, you're not going to be, if you have more options, you're not going to use either one. You're going to use something like Folka or Lena or one of the Neovision's base rods. Yeah, so Aiden's decent, it's fine, but it's just there's better options out there. And then Mastermind Zahn, his STMR. His STMR is amazing. If you have multiple copies of Zahn, make multiples of his STMR. We're going to look at it because it's one of my favorites in the game. It is super, super overloaded and good. It actually doesn't really do a ton, but it's just what it does is so good. So it's a dagger with 100% LB fill rate, 30% evasion, and it enables dual wield. This is super good for support units, even if they can't wear daggers naturally, because you can run this in Item World, get the upgraded dagger rare. That's 250% fill rate. If you have two of these, you can swap or slap both of them on your unit. If your unit cannot wear daggers naturally, you do one copy of Pinello's TMR, the 3-star unit. That allows you to equip daggers, and your dual wielding daggers giving you 60% evasion. Even if you can't naturally dual wield, you get 60% evasion and 500% fill rate with both of these daggers. It's incredible. And we talked about it during Kaito, how building your entire team for evasion is really powerful in certain fights, especially in Clash of Wills. A few times now, the strategy has been literally 100% evasion on the entire party. So the more sources of evasion, the better. And this is a great, great, great source of evasion and LB fill rate. I love this STMR. And even if you only use one of them on a unit that can't naturally dual wield, for example, I can't think of someone off the top of my head, but there are quite a few support units, like Nicole, Lord of the Seas Nicole. He can't wear shields, but he can wear daggers. You can give him like a spirit rod and just slap this in his offhand, which would otherwise be empty, at no cost at all, because it enables dual wield, so you can stick it in the offhand, and it turns on dual wield that he didn't naturally have, gives him evasion, gives him fill rate. Really, really good. Really good. Agent Olive, again, this whole Black Friday banner was like the STMR banner. Agent Olive gives us Black Sparky. So I mentioned before how there's lots and lots of two-handed STMR guns. This is one of the two best options in the game. So again, if you don't need any more passive stats, the better option is Lara Croft Neovision's. Her STMR is just no passives, but the highest flat attack. If you do need passives, Agent Olive's STMR is great. It gives 50% attack power and 30% LB damage. That's before Item World. So Item World, the gun rare is 40% attack power. So assuming you get a perfect roll, all attack power, you're getting from Item World 40, 10, and 15. That's 65 attack power plus 50 more from the guns passive. That's 115% attack power and 30% LB damage on a 174 attack power two-handed gun with high variance. That is amazing. That is tied for best two-handed weapon in the game. One of the best weapons in the game, period. Because, Louise is currently very, very meta on global, and she is on almost every single high-ranking Clash of Wills and Dark Visions team because guns are so powerful right now, and Black Sparky is one of the reasons. It is an amazingly powerful STMR. I recommend you get at least 2 of them if you can. If you've got 8 olives, make a second copy, run it in Item World. Lots of units like guns. There you go. Faisalis's STMR is a one-handed gun that gives, I think it gives true dual wield. I'm going to double check. I forget exactly. I think it's true dual wield. It's a 174 attack, one-hander. Yeah, true dual wield, 50%. Not great. Mostly because we're not dual wielding it anymore. So there you go. Crown Prince Noctis's STMR. We're gonna talk about it in the Chronicle sense. So by default, it's not anything special. But this is one of those unlimited Chronicles. You can upgrade as many of these as you want, all of them to +4. At +4, Crown Prince Noctis's STMR is a 50% LB damage, I think 220 attack power by memory, and it gives some flat stats to Final Fantasy 15 units. But even ignoring the flat stats for FF15, it gives everyone 50 LB and decently high attack power. Probably the best LB one-hander for physicals in the game. It's kind of handicapped by the fact that it is a one-hander, and we're not using one-handers these days. But it is one of the best one-handed weapons in the game for physical units. No killers on it, though, so killers can sometimes, be better, but there you go. Luna Freya's STMR is one of the best Evoker materials in the game. It gives 50% LB damage, and it gives 50% to 4 different resistances. So this is really good for Evokers, and it's good for tanks, or just units that need more resistances. It's like, I forget the exact ones, like water, lightning, I know it's water and 3 other resistances. I forget which ones. Ice, I think. But yeah, but the big thing here is 50% Evo damage. That is going to be best of slot on the majority of the Evokers in the game. So Luna Freya's STMR, wonderful. Bunch of limiteds. White Lily Dark Phoenix STMR is technically a one-handed whip. You can dual wield it, but the passive is it gives double hand. Not anything special. It's a whip. Whips are currently, at this point in time, not good on global. It's, double hand. There's no whip in peril on global. Overall, not a good STMR. Awakened Warrior of Light. I mentioned earlier when I was talking about shields, this is my personal favorite physical shield. And the reason is, well, basically, it's the highest defense shield in the game. So, the flat defense is what scales your equipment double hand stat. Most modern tanks can easily hit 400% true double hand for defense. So the higher, the better. It also gives 30 to 4 different resistances. So, if I need a specific resistance, I'll gear for that depending on what the fight is. I'll go for that. Like if I need Earth Resist, I'll go with Sea Card Shield. If I need, Wind Resist, I'll go with the Wind Buckler, which is actually a quest item, not a STMR. But yeah, so if I don't need a specific resistance, I just need plain generic bulk, it's always this shield. And it does give auto mitigation to physical, but this is completely irrelevant. This is always going to be overridden by your buffs. So that's ignorable. But yeah, highest defense shield in the game. That's why I like it. So, if I need just raw defense, Shield of Light's where it's at. These are limited. Arden's STMR is a little bit of a weird one. This is one, when I first got it, I was really excited. I'm like, oh, this is great. I can get status immunity and attack power. Turns out, in real-world use, I don't think, ever equipped this STMR. Almost always, my materia slots are just more valuable for things like double hand or dual wield or LB damage or killers. If I need status immunity, 99 out of 100 times on my physical units, I'm equipping King Edgar's STMR in the accessory slot. And I'm using my materia slots for killers or LB damage or stuff like that. Yeah, so In theory, Arden's STMR should be good, but materia slots just have way more valuable uses over using an entire materia slot for status immunity. Now that said, there are maybe some exceptions. I just haven't run into them just yet. Regis' STMR is really bad. It's a one-handed sword with like percent HP and spirit. It's just not good at all. Hess King Lastwell's STMR at default is pretty bad. It's a two-handed katana with some mod boost, very, very low mod boost. Really terrible. That said, it does have a Chronicle upgrade to turn it into true Purple Lightning. Even then, it's still not that great, but for any Lastwell variant, for every single Lastwell in the game, original all the way up through Neovision's Lastwell, the chronicled, upgraded Hess King Lastwell's STMR True Purple Lightning +4 is going to almost always be best in slot on every single Lastwell. It gives him flat stats, it gives him LB damage, it gives him chain cap increase, which is a big problem that the Neovision one doesn't have by default. That fixes that problem. So yeah, so for Lastwells, best in slot. For everyone else, there's better katanas coming up. Some limiteds. Blue Mage Fina, you can't really UOC her, but she is a permanent unit. Her STMR is great. It's a chest slot with high magic, high attack power, 50 light resist, and 100% fairy killer for physical and magical. It is exceptionally strong against fairies, and it is completely and totally free. So there's no reason to not have that. Paladin Porum's STMR is really good. It's got some MP on it, but more importantly, it's got really high fire resist. I forget exact amount. I think 70% fire resist. So yeah, similar to Kimono Fina's STMR. If you need fire resist on a mage, great option. Great option. If your unit cannot wear heavy armor and you need fire resist, this is a really good option. If you can't wear, Veritas of the Flames STMR for 80% on your tank, but your tank can wear robes, then Paladin Porum's STMR is 70 fire resist. Really, really good. Paladin Cecil's STMR, not that great. It's a sword with high spirit. Used to be the highest spirit sword in the game. It's not anymore. Now General Celeste's, or Neovision Celeste, has the better spirit sword. But, yeah, it's basically just a sword with high spirit and 20% spirit. It's kind of lackluster these days. Yeah, General Celeste's sword is better for spirit, but the reality is almost always you're going to be using a staff instead of a sword for spirit, other than some very, very strange exceptions. Sweet Nicole's STMR, by memory, is 80% ice resist. If this is the one I'm thinking, yeah, it is. Okay, yeah, so this one is, is it only 60? No, it's 80. Okay, so 60 magic, 40 MP, 80% ice resist. Like I said before, I love super high resistance items, because if I need just ice resist, this can almost certainly handle it with one materia slot. Most of the time. It depends on the fight, of course. You need more. But usually, one materia slot can fix your ice resist problems. I love high ice resist, and 60 magic, and 40 MP. This is a really, really good materia. Even if you just need the magic, 40 MP plus 60 magic is still pretty good, even if you ignore the ice resist. And it's not restricted. It's not like tied to rods, not tied to robes. It is universal. I really like this material, even though I don't use it very often, because again, most of the time I prefer combo materials like MP plus LB damage, or MP plus killers, stuff like that, or MP plus dual wield or plus double hand. But it's still pretty good. Sweet Luca's STMR is great. I forget the exact resistances, but this is again one of those like Summer Folka and Citra and all. It's 60% to 3 resistances. Again, high resistance STMRs, those are the ones you love to have lots of copies in your toolbox. When a fight comes along that needs, for example, water and wind resist at the same time, you're going to be so happy you've got 3 of these in your treasury or whatever. Like, you're going to be very happy. Not to mention 40 HP and spirit on top is really good bulk. This is a really, really good STMR. Limited. Heinz STMR, for a while it was pretty nice. I think it got kind of power crept pretty bad by the free Conundrum Helm or Corundrum Helm from Louise's event. Louise's event, it's only, I think, 55 magic. It's a little bit less magic, but it gives 20 to all resist. This is 20 to only 3 resistances. Like, technically speaking, if you only need fire, ice, or lightning resist, and you only need 20%, this is better because it's higher magic, but still, it feels a little low impact for an STMR. It's not super great, but it's not bad either, and I do use it every now and then if a fight only needs that much resistance. Awakened Onion Knight is, by memory, 100% true dual wield and 50 attack power with swords. It's really good, especially if you're using swords, but again, the big problem is we're almost never dual wielding anymore. Units that are dual wielding usually very, very easily cap their true dual wield through other sources. We've got things like the Ruby Mask, which is just better overall. And this is tied to a weapon type, so not super powerful. Madame Adele's STMR. This is one that, like, I don't know. I'm sitting here thinking of Neovision's Adele. Okay, this one. Okay, never. I was thinking of Neovision's Adele. This one's actually okay. This usually sees use for me on Tifa or Carton. If they're going for a double hand build and they're not using the Clash of Wills chess piece, this is a good chess piece for them because both of them, when they're going double hand, kind of struggle to cap their percent attack, and this gives 30% attack with a fist. It's relatively decent high base attack. So for Carton or Tifa, this can be pretty good. For other units, not so much. It does give stop immunity. Usually for most units, if I need stop immunity, I prefer Neovision Sephiroth STMR, but of course that is a premium STMR that you may not have. But that gives stop immunity on a better chess piece for most units. But for other units, this is like the quote-unquote budget way to give stop immunity to a DPS unit without very much loss. I mean, 55 attack power is pretty good on the chess slot, and it gives stop immunity. So that's, even if you're not using a fist, stop immunity is really nice sometimes. Liliset's STMR. I've not been using this as much recently. I mean, it's really good in theory or in reality. It's just like I haven't used it so much these days. It's a ribbon effect with 2 LB per turn and auto refresh, and it gives okay-ish defense, attack, and magic. It's just like, I don't know. I've not really been using it that much. I don't know. It seems like my accessories on support units these days are going to things like Aerith's STMR, or things like Rose's earrings, or like Chocobo Feather for guts. I'm not really using my accessory slots for status immunity on my support units. And for DPS units, there's overall better stuff. And actually, now that I'm even realizing, this actually, I think, is better than Edgar's STMR. I think it is better than Edgar. You know, the reason I use Edgar's STMR so often is just habit, because Edgar's STMR is older, and I just like, that's just been my go-to. I usually just forget about this, but this is actually just straight up better than Edgar's STMR. So the next time in a video you guys see me using Edgar's STMR for status immunity, post in the comments, you once again forgot about Moonshade Earring, which is better for physical. Yeah, so just looking at it, like, it is literally just flat out better than Edgar's, like, just pretty much every way. Yeah. So this is better than Edgar's, so I take it back. This is a really good STMR that I usually just forget about. My bad. I will try to remember in the future the next time a physical unit needs status immunity. We're going to go get Liliset's. For mages, I would still go with the Creel's headband, though, because the headband is a less contested slot for mages. Like, mages just don't have any helmets at all they care about, like, literally. Other than Clash of Wills, like, what mage helmet do you even care about? There's, like, none. There's no competition there. So Creel's headband's a really nice slot. Now, for mages, you can get things like Yuna's STMR or Heliotite for mana reduction, etc. But for physical units, yeah, Liliset. And then Wizard of Shantoto. I mentioned this earlier. The reason the chess slot STMRs for mages are not as good, because this exists. This is like the default best in slot for the majority of mages that use their LB. It's 85 magic. It's the highest in the game for Robe. The Clash of Wills and all is higher, but that's a clothing. For robes, this is the highest robe in the game. It gives 150 flat MP, 10% MP per turn, and 50 LB damage. This is super, super good on almost every single LB mage in the game. Like, if the LB mage is not wearing Clash of Wills chest piece, but they do use their LB, they're almost certainly going to be wearing this as their best in slot. Nearly always, unless they just can't wear robes like Faisalus, etc. Minister's Coat, amazingly powerful. You want multiple copies if possible. Unaleska's STMR is another one of those really, really, really good STMRs, and this is one I use all the time, even on non-evokers. For evokers, it's everything. It's everything. 60 unrestricted magic, 40 evo magic, 40 Esper stats, and 30 evo damage. This is just all in one about evokers. This is, even for non-magic evokers like Una, this is still going to usually be best in slot for most evokers. And then for just plain old mages, it's 60 magic, but I like using it because, again, 40% Esper stats. Now, on something like Bahamut, this is adding an extra, like, over the cap to something like, I don't know, 60 more magic, which isn't much, but if you're capping stats anyway, more the better. So this is just a really, really good mage STMR, especially for evokers, but even regular old mages, because you're getting an extra 40 bonus stats. I really like that STMR. Star Player Titus's STMR is a two-handed water element sword. It has the Chronicle that upgrades it, makes it a lot better. It gives himself flat stats. The problem is, for one thing, it's even after the Chronicle, it's not the highest attack power. It doesn't have good variants, at least not yet. Turfing is better for swords from normal units. It is locked to water element, so that's very specialized. So overall, I guess not bad. It does give LB damage, too, I should mention. It gives 30 LB damage. Or maybe 50 after being chronicled. I'm not sure. But in any case, it's locked to water. Two-handed sword users are not super common. The ones that do exist usually have their own they want to use instead, like Dorgan wants his own STMR. Elena wants her own TMR. Stuff like that. Titus does really enjoy it if you're on a water team. But even on a water team, at the current time in Global, it's still better to go with a real variance weapon like guns or fists or harps or whatever, because variance is a real big problem and swords have bad variance on Global. After the variance fix, this will be a really good weapon for water teams, but we need that variance fix first. Pain's STMR, even though I kind of like complain every time I get her, because I don't like the unit from Final Fantasy X2. Don't hate me if you're a Pain fan. I didn't like her in X2, so it kind of turns me off to her as a unit. But anyway, her STMR is technically pretty good for tanks or anyone that needs resistances. It's 40 to 4 different resistances in the weapon slot. The problem is it's a great sword, and as I have found out, a surprisingly large amount of tanks cannot equip great swords. They just can't equip them. Some can, but quite a few times I'll be like gearing a team. I'm like, oh yeah, Pain's STMR can give me resistance. Like, oh, but my tank can't equip it. Sad face. So yeah, so when you can use it and when these resistances are relevant, it's great. Other than that, it's kind of like whatever. Also of note, there are no defensive stats at all on this. So even on tanks that can use it, it's usually going to be better to wear an actual tank weapon, like, for example, Aphmaw's STMR, Snow's STMR, or a staff for Spirit, and get your resistances elsewhere instead of getting literally no defense or Spirit from the weapon slot. And so it really, I'm kind of like talking myself out of this as being worse than I originally thought. And even then, I don't use it very often for exactly that reason. But in some scenarios, it can be okay. Riku X2 STMR. I really like this. This is really nice. I've said it a million times. I'm a huge fan of LB per turn. I love gearing my support units in like 12 LB per turn, which is the cap. And this gives you 6 LB per turn, and it gives you a little bit of bulk. It gives you 30 HP. And it also gives you 30 attack power unrestricted and 30 more if you're using a dagger. So it can actually even be up to 60% attack power with 6 LB per turn, which can matter for DPS units. Honestly speaking, I almost never wear this on DPS. It almost always goes on a support unit. But I wear this on support units a lot. Half of your LB per turn, or half of the cap from a single slot, is super powerful. So this combined with like, what's that girl's name from Final Fantasy 13? The chest slot, the free girl, the event girl, the chest slot. It gives 8 LB per turn. Lumina's clothes combined with this caps you out. 2 slots, boom, done. You might not see this as often for me on my videos just because Kyrie's STMR is way better, in my opinion. It's more LB per turn with a lot better side stats. But still, really good. And you can wear this plus Kyrie's STMR at the same time. Yuna X2's STMR is a one-handed gun, really high attack power, the Tiny B. It gives 50 attack power, and you can enchant it in an item row for up to 65% more. So you can get enormous amounts of attack power. It's a one-handed gun. We don't dual wield it anymore. You've heard it before. You heard it again. That's why. Limited stuff. Freya's STMR. Freya's STMR is a two-handed spear. It's holy element. I don't think it has jump damage. I'm going to double check real quick. Does it have jump damage? 50 jump damage. So 50 jump. It's got some. It's better. Okay, I thought it had none, but it does have a little bit. It is locked light element. It's a two-handed spear. We've gone over before why two-handed spears are bad, because right here, damage range, average of 125. That's the worst in the game for two-handers. So that's why we never, ever use spears if we don't have to. It is holy element locked, so eventually Variance Fix will fix this, but still, it's still going to be holy locked. If you're doing a holy team, almost always someone can imbue holy, like Eris can be on the team, or Ling's going to be on the team. You've got ways to imbue. You'd rather use things like Mazurka's STMR or Kane's Chronicle STMR. So not a ton of use for Freya's STMR. Black Mage Vivi's STMR, we did not get the upgrade on Global. If we had gotten it, it'd be great for Black Mage Vivi. Unfortunately, Global skipped the upgrade, so it is just a bad rod that gives modifiers to Doomsday. Unfortunately, the only one that uses Doomsday is Black Mage Vivi. Black Mage Vivi has not been meta for a year and a half. So this STMR is pretty worthless today. It makes me sad. Rakish Thief Zidane. This is the other unlimited Chronicle, meaning just like Noctis, you can upgrade as many copies of this to +4 as you want. It makes it a really good dagger with 50% true dual wield, and then for Zidane himself, he gets some Chronicle stats, LB damage and flat stats. Great for Zidane, but for everyone else, I mean, honestly, it's just not that great because it's a dual wield weapon, and we don't dual wield. Epsilon Nicole. Now, we talked about him way back when we talked about Marie, and I said his is better. This is why I like his better. So his STMR is the same 30 to all resistances, which is super good. If you need lots of resistance, like let's say 5 different resistances for a fight, then those double resistance STMRs, unless all 3 of them fall into that fight, they're only going to be about 120. This is giving you an effective 150 if you're using 5 resistances. On a fight that uses every element, well, this is 180 resist, which is, no, it's more than that. 240, I think. Yes, 240 resist, I think. Anyway, you get the idea. Resist all, really good sometimes, but so compared to Marie's STMR, you're trading 50% spirit with a staff, and instead gaining 3 LB per turn, 30% MP, and some status immunity. I personally really prefer this. Of the big reason, 3 LB per turn. Love it. Love LB per turn. Give me all the LB per turn. But more importantly, you can stack this. Marie's STMR is not stackable. This one is. So if you've got lots of copies, you can put 4 copies on a unit, 120 resist all, 12 LB per turn, 120% MP, and then stats immunity. So this is just a great STMR that you love to off-banner Nicole, because more of that is never a bad thing. So great STMR. Secure of the Delta Star. This used to be really popular back in the day. It's a rod with LB damage and percent magic. The problem these days is the flat magic is just really too low. 172 magic, and the LB damage is only 30. We've got lots of sources of 50% LB damage. You know, Milo's STMR, the Chronicle upgrade to Shantoto's TMR. We've also got other things like I can't think of it. I can't think of I can't think of it. It's the throwing weapon. Ibarra's that's true dual wield, not LB damage. Anyway, the point is, Black Roselia not seen used much these days because the LB damage is too low. It does get 50% magic, which could be useful, but right here is the big problem. Just low magic, 172, no killers. We've got better options these days. It's not bad or anything. It's just we've got better. Limited. Supreme Diva Axstar. Now, I mentioned before, if you're looking for a two-handed katana, this is probably the best one from unit of choiceable 5 stars. There are better katanas from Neovision's units. So if you have, for example, Cleoman Axstar Neovisions or Cyan Neovisions, or even Orange Chronicle Weapon might arguably be better because it's higher flat attack. But this one does give 50% unrestricted attack power while being worn. So that is pretty nice. 188 attack power and 50% unrestricted attack power. So I like that a lot. But again, there are way better katanas from base Neovision units. So if you've got access to those, go with that instead. If this is your only option, then this would probably be the one I recommend if you have to have a two-handed katana right now immediately. This is probably the best one, assuming killers don't matter. There could be some coming up later with killers on them, like Cleome's katana, but we'll get to that soon. Draconian Princess Fina's STMR is a magical bow. It's just bad. It's just bad. Never use it. If you really need a magical bow, this one might actually be higher magic than the moon bow, but I think it is actually higher magic. But even so, like, no mages use bows. There's no good bow in peril. There's no reason to ever use a bow on a mage over a rod. So just no. Dark Spirit Saw's STMR is great. I love this. This is 80% dark resist and 60 magic. The magic is kind of whatever. But I mentioned back on Dark Veritas, I find that usually when you need dark resist on a fight, you usually need a lot of dark resist on a fight. And getting a bunch from one source is awesome. I love the fact that I've got 3 of these. I've pulled Diablo Saw a bunch. And I've got 3 copies of this. And quite a few times, I have used all 3 copies on a team. So great STMR. Dark is one of the more commonly used resistances on a fight. And slightly harder to gear compared to some of the other ones, in my opinion. It's one of the harder to gear. I think Fire and Water are probably the 2 easiest. Dark is one of the harder ones. Not the hardest, but one of the harder ones. Infernal Fire Rain's STMR is a chest piece with Beast Killer on it. Just like most of these killer materials or killer STMRs, if you're fighting a beast, it's wonderful. If you're not fighting a beast, it's kind of like, eh. It does have 50 fire resist too, so it can be a really good fire resist option, even if you're not fighting a beast, but you need fire resist, because it does have high attack power, so that's pretty nice. These are limited. Tifa's STMR is, if I remember correctly, 80% attack power with fist weapons, and 3 LB per turn. I do like LB per turn, but again, just percent attack power and nothing really big mind-blowing, like, no killers, no resistances, locked to a weapon type. Not great. I did mention that Carton and Tifa can usually struggle to maximize their attack power, but there's better options out there. Like, for example, Last Guardian. I really like Last Guardian. When we get there, you'll see why. But yeah, I don't find myself using this almost ever. Too bad. Cloud AC's STMR, Advent Children. His back in the day was on everybody. Everybody used this that could use it. He used it. Noctis used this before he got his Chronicles. Any LB damage user used to use this. These days, no one uses it because, what's the reason? Say it with me now. It's one-handed. No one uses one-handed weapons. One-handed is old meta. We are double hand or we go home. So no one uses this anymore. Limited. 4 wins Physalus is a great STMR. It's a magical gun. Well, it's not the highest anymore. It used to be the highest magical gun in the game. It also has a Chronicle upgrade, limit of 1 though. But even without the Chronicle, it's 180 magic. And the reason that's relevant is for Louise. Louise loves using guns. Her own TMR is locked to fire. So if you don't want to do fire element with Louise, this is your best option. Other than Sniper Physalus's STMR, a relatively new Neovision. That one is better. If you don't have Sniper Physalus, this is the second best option. And with the Chronicle, it goes even higher to magic. Actually, I think with the Chronicle, I think it's higher than Sniper Physalus is with the Chronicle. It's 195. It does have mana reduction, and then for all Physalus versions, it's got even more stuff. So overall, for magical guns, really, really good. And then, of course, all the Physalus mages herself really love this. War Hero Reagan's STMR, it's a one-handed sword with dual wield on it. True dual wield on it. It's one-handed. I'm gonna stop singing that same song. We don't use one-handers anymore. Hallowed Age's Charlotte STMR is wonderful. I love this. It is the only source in the game of auto general mitigation. You can slap this on like your base form for your DPS unit, and when you shift, this will persist permanently, undispellable, permanent, 30% general mitigation. You can put it on your tank. If your Provoker is getting dispelled a lot, for example, if your Dispel Provoker on the Ashura fight, anywhere you're getting dispelled, this is awesome. Putting this on an off form or even the main form, well, it's actually just, the armor itself is not bad. It's 106 defense and spirit. No stats on it, so overall I do prefer Wilhelm's STMR as far as pure bulk goes, but I love this passive effect. Anytime I can slip this into a unit's off form that is not being used, I will do so. Because even if you're actively buffing your party with general mitigation, now of course if you're very mindful and you're never letting your buffs fade, there's no dispels on the fight, then this is redundant and it does nothing. But if you're ever forgetful, maybe you forget to buff, maybe your tank let their mitigation slip, or more importantly, if the boss uses dispels, this can be life-saving. Very, very good thing. Also, for any boss that ambushes with unavoidable damage, for example, the Intanger fight, it's kind of old at this point, but this could give you mitigation for the ambush before you have a chance to buff your party. So I love this STMR, and I use it all the time, even though most of the time it ends up being redundant. I didn't need it. I just like the peace of mind that I've always got unremovable general mitigation on my unit. Mystical Ice Lastwell, he is very similar to Infernal Fire Rain. It's a chest piece. It gives ice resist and it gives Dragon Slayer. If you're fighting a dragon, usually best in slot. If you need ice resist, it's one of the better options to get ice resist because it does have very high attack power on it. So overall, great STMR. Graceful Champion Fang. This is basically a slightly worse, in my opinion, version of Roberta's STMR. It's 100 jump damage and attack power while using a spear. The reason I say it's worse is Roberta's is technically unlimited, no weapon type required. This does require a spear. That being said, you cannot stack this or Roberta's. So if your Dragoon needs 200% jump damage, you're going to be wearing both of them anyway. So yeah, one of the best options for jump damage in the game. Daughter of Destiny Vanillas. This is a Werber's Boon, right? If I remember correctly. Yep. Okay, so yeah, so this is probably one of the best options for guts on a mage. It just depends. If your mage needs guts, you're going to want to either be using a Werber's Boon in the materia slot or Chocobo Feather in the accessory slot. So it just depends on which of those is less important for your mage. If your accessory slots are spoken for, you're going with Chocobo Feather. If you're using 2 really good accessories on your mage, for example, maybe you're using Luna Freya, Neovisions, and she needs both accessories for Malphase's STMR, then maybe you want this in the materia slot instead, if it's a fight that does require guts. If you don't need guts, it's kind of whatever. It's 60 magic spirit, 50% stop resist. Like, if the guts is not important, I'd probably go with a different materia. For example, if I just need more magic, I'd go with Unaleska's STMR for the Esper stats. If I needed resistances, I'd go with like Nicole's STMR or whatever resistances is required, Hope's STMR. But if you need guts, great source for it. Also for support units or healers, it is 60% spirit and 100% guts. So, if your support unit needs guts, great source, great source. Lightning, that's a limited item. Here's Noelle. I've mentioned Last Guardian so many times. This is why. So Last Guardian, 80% unrestricted attack power and 2 killers. That being said, most of the time, obviously these killers are worthless. If you're not fighting a machine or dragon, who cares? If you are, obviously it's amazing. The big thing is 80% attack power unrestricted. So while all the other stuff, for example, Balthier, Sephiroth, Elaspiris, Advent Children Tifa, all of these require a specific weapon type. This one is just brainless. You can slap this on any physical unit. It is 80% attack power, no downside. For example, Delita's STMR, it's also unrestricted 80, but that has the headache of 2,000 self-damage every turn, which again, the damage isn't the problem. The auto-cast is the problem, and I hate that 1 second delay every single turn where it locks your unit up. You can't do it for a second. It's just irritating. But this one, no downside at all, and sometimes you've got just really big killers for machine or dragon. So yeah, I love Last Guardian. Anytime I'm building a unit and I'm missing like 60, 70 attack power, I'm like, okay, I'll just slap on Last Guardian. Done. Easy, convenient, just very, very nice, very flexible, 80% attack power with a few killers. I really like that. Sarah's STMR, I'm trying to remember. Oh, yeah, that's right. This is the Archer thing. Okay, so we mentioned Kefka, and I mentioned Sarah's is Kefka, but better. Yeah, so just like Kefka, it's 60% magic, 100% magic double hand, but it's also 20% magic with the bow, which 99.9% of the time is not going to matter. It'll be identical to Kefka's, but on that weird scenario, for some reason, you're using a mage with a bow, well, this is better. And it is just, at worst, it's the same as Kefka. Rarely, it's better than Kefka. So, still, and it stacks with Kefka. If you want both, maybe you want 200% double hand, and you want 120% magic. Well, you can't get that with Paw's STMR. I think the highest magic materia is Shantoto's at 80% magic. So if you only have 2 materia slots open, you need 200 more double hand and 120% magic. You can get that by stacking Sarah and Kefka together instead of Paw's and something else. So yeah, very frequently, you're happy to have both Kefka and Sarah's STMR in your inventory. Very nice. Cypher's STMR is a 2-handed greatsword with 20% evasion. That's pretty much it. I guess if you're going with a double hand build that needs evasion, this could be good. But for any kind of tanking build ever, we're not going double hand. We're going dual wield with like Zahn's Daggers or Durandal or Weapon and Shield with evasion. We're never using Cypher's weapon on a tank other than some like really weird scenario that I have never seen. But Cypher's STMR, not great. Lone Lion Squall's STMR, it's like not great. It's a 180 greatsword, 25 LB damage and 50% true double hand. So this is why I said things like Cloud or Aldor King's Reign are just not good because they're just better weapons out there. This is better than both of those. This does get a Chronicle upgrade in the future when the Final Fantasy VIII banner comes out with Renoa, Laguna, Kyros, Ward, etc. When that banner comes out, this gets a Chronicle upgrade. It becomes a lot better. It becomes best in slot on Neovision's Awakened Squall. But until then, it's still kind of a plainish, not great STMR. It is, 50-50 double hand, 25 LB damage. It's one of the better options, but I still prefer things like Napi's STMR, which we'll get to, I guess, during the Neovision's STMR video, not this one. But it's an okay greatsword. Irving's STMR is awesome. I love this one. This is 100% Beast and Machine Killer. Anytime a killer gives 100% to a single killer is great. 100% killer to 2 races? Well, I've never seen a Beast Machine yet in the game, but I'm sure at some point we're going to be fighting like a robotic cat or something, and this will be just beyond God tier. But on top of being 100% to 2 killers, it also gives double hand, which is really nice. It's only 50%, so it's not super high. But Beast has been a recurring killer for quite a few Dark Visions and Clash of Wills. Not to mention the next upcoming Clash of Wills is yet again going to be a Beast. So Beast is like a really, really common killer lately. So 100 Beast Killer is super good. And for units like Carton that are going true double hand when they shouldn't be, well, they should be, but they're not supposed to, more double hand is great. You mix this with, for example, well, I'm not going to go over builds for you in this video, but just trust me that this 50% true double hand does matter sometimes. And 100 killer to 2 races, awesome. Selfie's STMR is really nice. Now, I mentioned before how true dual wield for mages is more common these days. This is one of the better options for it. This is a great STMR. It's 50% unrestricted magic. It enables dual wield, which sounds weird because most true dual wield mages have dual wield anyway. A few of them actually don't. And then also there's some mages that you're going to force true dual wield on and they don't have it naturally. I can't think to my mind who we do that for. There were a few of them that we did that I can't remember who we did it for. But it's come up in the past. It also gives 50% true dual wield, as I mentioned. And it gives 30% more magic with a fist weapon. And fist weapons are actually quite a bit more useful on global because we have Cacteria. And Cacteria is an amazing debuffer. 35% fist in peril. So sometimes you want mages to go fist weapons even if they can't wear fist naturally. You like to force fist on them because of Cacteria. And I've done that a lot. I've given mages that want to rod, but I force them to wear fist because of Cacteria. So great STMR. Some limited. Benevolent Beauty Rem. This is like low-key pretty good. People kind of overlook this. This is similar to Zahn's STMR in that it is it's a 100% fill rate dagger that turns on dual wield even if you can't dual wield naturally. This one is better though if you don't need evasion. If evasion is not relevant, this is actually better than Zahn's because this gives you 120 spirit. And, a lot of times spirit is pretty useful. It powers up your health regen. It powers up your mana regen, depending on the mana regen source. Not all mana regen, but like refresh and stuff. If you cast that, it'll power that up. It'll power up your healing. It'll bulk you up against magical damage. A lot of bosses use magical damage over time. You have to just bulk up and survive. This is great for support units. Technically speaking, it's also an okay mage weapon. 180 attack power, 180 magic, and 120 spirit. If you need to bulk up your mage, it can be a good option. I honestly don't really use it for that reason, or that often for that reason. Yigni might like this weapon if you're using Yigni. But mostly this goes on my support units. Make sure in item world you get the 150% LB fill rate, and just like Crimson Butterfly, you're getting 250 fill rate per dagger equipped when using that. Really good. Wildcard Ace's STMR is awesome. Awesome. You've seen my videos before. I absolutely love loading up the unused shift form or base form with auto buffing. So this is 60 magic and 50 spirit, which is decent on its own. Death immunity. So this is the best source of death immunity for either magical tanks or mages. But more importantly, auto buffing. Love me some auto buffing. This gives you permanent, undispellable break immunity to spirit and magic break. For mages, amazing. For magical tanks, amazing. Now that being said, most of the time these days we are using buffers that give us that anyway, but there's quite a few parties where I don't use a buffer and I don't really have a way to fit break immunity. This is awesome. Slap this in the base form, stay in the shift form the whole fight, or start in the shift form and stay in the base form the whole fight. That buff will be there the entire fight, permanent, unremovable. And Gumi, please, 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 one day, give us the physical version of this. I would love this effect on a global exclusive item for attack and defense. I cannot tell you how many trials I have done on both JP, on global, and I know are going to be upcoming, where my physical DPS are attack broken, and I just can't fit a way to cure it or buff immunity to it. And I just do the fight with an attack break always active. I would love to be able to equip permanent, undispellable attack break immunity on like the base form of a DPS unit. But for the magical side, Wildcard Ace STMR, awesome. Healing Avatar Lids STMR is very niche. Every now and then, the special effect is going to be awesome. I used it, I think, once ever on a Dark Visions fight where I couldn't fit Lakshmi on the unit, but I did need stop immunity. This gives any unit that can equip hammers, you do it, which is pretty rare, and there's no equip hammer materia. But if the unit can equip hammers, you can let them buff stop or charm immunity on an off turn. That's pretty much the only reason for this item. And of course, you can also get that from Lakshmi. But like I mean, I forget what Dark Visions fight it was, but there was a Dark Visions fight where I put this on Carton in the base form, and obviously I didn't want to put Carton on Lakshmi because it's not a DPS Esper. And I used Carton on a free turn to buff stop. I think it was for Anima, maybe? No, it wasn't. It was some recent Dark Visions fight that did stop, and I used Carton to buff stop immunity. Of course, in 3 years, that was the only time I have ever used the Healing Avatar's Hammer. But for that one very rare niche scenario, it came in handy. Will that scenario come up again? It might. It might. Charm immunity too. You know, it could happen. So for those very rare scenarios, it can be good. Otherwise, bleh. Flame of Rebirth Jake. This is yet another of those two-handed gun STMRs. So, you know, low attack power. It does give guts. It can be another source of guts. Maybe you stick it in the base form or something, because this is like, if you're using a two-handed gun, I already talked about it. Black Sparky is just better than this, like way better than this. It's even got higher base attack than this one. So yeah, Black Sparky blows it away. No real reason to use that. Umbral Dragon Dark Thena's STMR is a whip. It's one-handed. It gives 50% true dual wield. It's also Dark Element, which can be useful, or it can be a handicap, depending on the unit, depending on the fight. Yeah, still, overall, it's a whip. There's no whip in peril in the game. We are getting a whip in peril distantly far into the future. It's coming from Premium Dark Thena. By that point, the whole game is true double hand. No one dual wields at all. No one dual wields as it is today. So a one-handed whip, doesn't really have much use. Dancing Heart Pinello. So I mentioned earlier about mages that can't wear robes. This is what I usually like to wear on them. Either this or Neovision's Aerith's STMR, the original Aerith. But this one's really good. It's 71 magic, it's clothing, and it gives 40% magic. I really like this 40% magic. This is really good. It opens up materia slots and helps you cap your stats. It's really efficient. And it's high magic. I think this is the second highest magic clothing in the game, not counting the Clash of Wills items. I think Neovision's Aerith has 80 magic when clothes. This is 71 plus 40. So Pinello's STMR, wonderful on Physalis or any other magical unit that can't wear robes. If you can wear robes, those are usually going to be better. Vaughn's STMR, absolute S tier, amazing. You want at least one, multiple is even better. So Durandal was changed to stack on global. On JP it doesn't stack. On global it does. It's a sword with 30% evasion and 30% draw attacks. So this is super, super amazing on either your real tank or your forced tank, meaning like a support unit going passive provoke evasion. You can dual wield this plus a Moogle Charm. That's 100% passive provoke and 60% evasion. That is super slot efficient, super good on support units, and even for tanks. It's draw attacks. You know, a lot of tanks want to build for passive provoke because you get dispelled, and that keeps you provoking even after a dispel. Evasion is usually really good on tanks. Yeah, so I would rank this as one of the best tank weapons in the game, even though it has no bulk on it whatsoever. This is still going to find its way onto most of my tank builds, unless the fight cannot be evaded. In that case, I'll go with a real bulk weapon. But anytime evasion works, I'm going to Durandal for my provoke needs. Very, very good STMR. Zeneda's STMR is great, technically. You know, the big problem is we're not dual wielding anymore. But if you are dual wielding, 65 attack power on an 65 flat attack on an accessory, and 100% true dual wield. That caps pretty much everyone, unless you're a unit you're forcing true dual wield on, which is the wrong direction these days. You know, we go through cycles in Brave XPS. Back in the day, you would force everyone to dual wield no matter what. Double hand was worthless. Then they fixed double hand and made double hand the way to go, but they made dual wield better for Dragoons, so Dragoons would always force dual wield, and you would want 1 or 2 of these on all your Dragoons for jumping, like Kane, etc. Not Kane, like Mazurka or Sid. Whoever was jumping, you would always want to dual wield. Now we're back to the double hand days. Everyone goes double hand. Even if you're a dual wield unit, you force double hand on the unit, like Carton and Tifa. Like, no one wants to dual wield. Like, dual wielding is a punishment. You don't want to. But if you have to dual wield, this is one of the best options to cap your dual wield. It's very, very high attack, 100% true dual wield on the accessory slot, which is usually less competition. Fina and Dark Fina STMR, it's fine. It's really high resistance. It's 50 dark and light resist, which if you need those resistances, this is great. It's 50 unrestricted magic, which is great. And then 50% true dual wield. You know, I've mentioned it before, even mages aren't really dual wielding these days. A few are, most aren't. And again, most of the time, if a mage is dual wielding, they want to be using Ravenheart and opening up those accessories for killer materials. So yeah, so the materia slot on mages is usually reserved for killers or LB damage. So unfortunately, this is not seeing a ton of use, but if the resistances matter, this is very, very good. Very slot efficient if you need dark or light resist. Limited. Garland's STMR is wonderful for mages. For tanks, you'd rather use Awakened Range STMR. Did we cover Awakened Range STMR? I don't think we did. Did we skip him? He should have already been on this list. Oops. If so. Anyway, so let's keep moving along. Well, just in case, if I skipped Awakened Range STMR, I may have. I think I did. How did I skip him? Well, it's really good. It's a good resistance accessory. Anyway, back on track. This is good for mages. So this sees a lot of use in Dark Visions and Clash of Wills. Anytime a magical unit needs to gear for resistances, this is really high magic and 30 resist all. This is just great all around. No bulk on it, which might be a problem in Clash of Wills, but even so, if you're going for damage with very minimal DPS loss but need some resistances, Garland's Cloak is good. Wearing 2 of these is even better. So you definitely want a few copies of Garland's Cloak. Where'd Garland go? Okay. Angel of Death Kuja. On its own, Brumal Cores are no good. It's 175. It's low magic, no killers, but auto buffing. So this only really has use as an auto buff. You stick this in your base form, or your off form, I should say, and permanent, undispellable 10% amp for fire and light, which is very, very low by today's standards. You're almost always buffing 30 or better on a pretty normal team. But this can be used even by physical units. Give them Equip Rod, put this in the base form, and if, for example, you either don't have time for a buff or you can't fit a buffer on your party, then getting 10% Amplify is better than 0% if there's no other better source. So here is a 10% light and fire amp. Yeah, but as just a standalone rod, you're never going to use this. The Dark Visions rod is better. There's just better options out there. Vostr's STMR is just bad. It's just really bad. It's a two-handed greatsword, and it gives you really low killers against humans. Like, really? Who cares? And it's just 100 spirit. Like, it's a two-hander, but, like, what tank is going to use a super low spirit, bad. It's just bad. This is a bad weapon. Just forget it exists. Dethrone Heroin Ash STMR, on the other hand, is awesome. So all the time in videos, so many times, I use Nethicite, and I get the comments, I missed that event. I don't have manufactured Nethicite. I can't copy your video. Well, here is Ash to the rescue to save you. It is a permanently available, unlimited source of Nethicite. And I use Nethicite as the just overall term for absorbing a spell. So for this one, it's called Treaty. No, it's not. It's called Power to Destroy Nethicite. It absorbs the next spell used, which is great. Super, super good. It is used in tons and tons of strategies. And while I say it is an unlimited source, it is an STMR. You do need 4 copies of Ash per copy of this STMR. But still, being able to seal a spell on a fight has seen many, many uses in the past and will see more uses in the future. Very, very powerful effect. Now, as far as a magic weapon, just don't use it. There's way better options out there. It's not really a magic weapon. It also gives a really low auto buff. This was relevant years ago. Nowadays, we've got auto shell, which gives better, so that's irrelevant again. All that really matters is right here. Power to destroy Nethicite. It's also technically a chaining frame, Bolting Strike, but it is a magic attack, so it doesn't dual wield, so it's only single hit. That's kind of irrelevant, not really going to be used. It's also not elemental, so you can forget that. I mean, it breaks too, which can be relevant, but no. Right here is what we care about. Nullify next spell for 1 turn. This does stack with other units using it. You can't stack it on the same unit, but like if 4 units in your party all cast this, you're going to absorb 4 spells that turn. Incredibly, incredibly powerful effect when it comes into play, and it comes into play pretty often. Limited Reno's STMR is, I mean, it's good, it's fine. It's a chest slot with 3 auto limit, which is nice. I love auto limit, and 40 attack power with a gun. So usually gun users are not struggling to cap percent attack because guns themselves have 50 attack in item world plus up to 25% more. Plus, most gun users are going to be using Black Sparky. If you're a dual wielder, you can use Tiny B. So it's incredibly rare for a gun user to be like, I need more percent attack. How could I get that? Well, if that question ever comes up, here's a really good source for percent attack. 40% attack with a gun, but it's just like I said, gun users almost never need more percent attack. So I would rate this somewhat lowish quality because no killers on it. But if you do happen to need percent attack, well, here you go. Limited. Renora's STMR is, once again, one of those auto buffers. So this one is mitigation. So in the base form or the off form, permanent, undispellable mitigation to Machina, 10%, which sounds low, but even for a dual race, this is like a stacking source of mitigation. So that is just an extra 5% or 10%, depending on if it's dual race, single race, right off the top. So if you can slap this on your tank and you're not buffing mitigation otherwise, that's just a straight up 10% less damage taken. That is very, very powerful. Or more realistically, almost everything in the game these days is dual race, so it's more likely going to be 5% less damage taken. But still, it's permanent, undispellable, 10% mitigation, super, super good. If you're fighting a machine, even if you're non-tanks, again, slap this on your DPS units, and they're all of a sudden taking less damage from a nuke that you can't cover, or like a fixed damage attack, or whatever. Or actually it wouldn't work on fixed damage, so ignore that. But if a nuke bypasses cover and hits your party, more mitigation is great. Now, obviously, it does not stack with machine mitigation. From like Ling, for example, can buff machine mitigation. A few other units can. Renora himself can. But if you're not using a machine mitigation buff, this is a great STMR. Now, other than that, it's unimpressive. It's like, yeah, it's got some nice flat HP, but who cares? That's not that big a deal. We're going to do one more, and then it's time for another break. We're almost at an hour. We're past an hour. Oh, my God. We're going to do Bruce. So Bruce is currently the best evasion hat in the game. It's 15% evasion on the hat slot. It's pretty high attack power, so you actually, for a DPS unit, you're not even losing really that much attack power. And it's also got 30 light and dark resist. This is a great STMR. So if you're, I mentioned it before, like on the Kaito STMR, on those parties where your whole party needs full evasion, this is going to be a really good choice on your DPS units to not take that big of a hit to fit more evasion in. Also, 30 light and dark resist with 15 evasion on the hat is really good. It is the highest evasion hat slot in the game, the next best being 10% from a limited collaboration that is no longer available. Other than that, it's only 5% in the hat slot. So very, very good STMR. Multiple copies is a great thing. I really like that. So that's going to be the end of part 2. I've been talking for an hour and 10 minutes again. So we will pick up from where we left off on Rufus Shinra in part 3. See you then.